Okay, so I'm going to invite up onto the stage now Bimal Gandhi from Uniken. We're going to be talking about, essentially a core problem when it really is for crypto or for traditional banks, and that is security. And at the heart of that is this question of identity. So Bimal's with Uniken, a company that is doing all sorts of exciting things. $3.4 trillion in transactions that you've processed through your system, and no fraud. 4.1 now, so you need to update the website. But 4.1 and no fraud. So we're going to sort of hold you to that rather big claim and see where it comes from. But first of all, why don't you just tell the audience a little bit about what you guys are all about and what you're doing, and then we'll sort of dive into some of these deeper questions.
Sure. Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Excellent.
So, our approach to security is that it needs to, one, be invisible and a non-factor for the customer. You have to drive user experience first and foremost to make security really viable in the consumer space. The second approach we said is, let's not try to put fingers in holes in a dam. Let's just build a brand new dam. So rather than approach security piecemeal, which is how a lot of the world has done it, we said let's develop a full defense in depth solution that solves all the major vectors at once and provide an SDK to any enterprise to put in their mobile app, which then makes the experience incredibly good. Mm-hmm. And the reason we can make the zero fraud claim is, in essence, we go ahead and defense in depth for us starts with endpoint threat detection, military grade at consumer speed. So no waiting for 14 seconds for a rootkit jailbreak malware test. We can actually run it with really no additional seconds added to the equation. We incorporate a device identity, an app identity, a biometric identity, whether it's on device or server side. And then the heart of our technology is a one-to-one key exchange. So we get rid of the certificate model that's public-private, and we go to private-private. We're able to do it at scale, IoT scale. And once we do all that, we use a whitelisted approach. So we get rid of man in the middle, because it's a mutual and simultaneous authentication. And every API in the mobile app goes completely dark to the internet. So that's why we can make that claim. So it's not just multi-factor authentication. It's not just endpoint. It's not device identity. It's all of the above in one seamless piece of technology. We didn't buy 5 pieces of technology, put it together. We built a cement wall reinforced with rebar, not bricks with mortar.
You're not the only one that's trying to do this, though. So, I mean, it is still sort of a major engineering feat in many respects, right? Because getting that private key exchange is one of the great challenges. Do you have something to show us?
I think the only slide we put up is, safety and convenience equals great experience.
Right.
I mean, that's really our mantra.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that I think all of us experience. We know that security is critical. It's just, pretty much rammed down our throats. We're all very, very concerned about our data, and our company's data, obviously. But on top of that, to know which actors that we're dealing with. And to get there, we've established incredibly frustrating processes.
Absolutely.
And yet we sort of come to this understanding, it sounds like you would say wrongly, that that's a sacrifice we have to make. That there's so I mean, how, from your perspective, right, are we moving to a world where this horrible, excessive number of passwords and the intense amount of engagement in that security process is going to go away?
So I think you're seeing the rapid move to that, right? Passwords, if you use them today, you should find somebody else to work with, right? They're just, credential compromise is the heart of the problem, and that's the crux. If you think of biometrics, right, it kind of leans back to the old security approach, which is identity was a risk factor. Is why I use identity to say, do I want to do business with you? Do I want to extend credit? What's the level of risk? Identity today has become the entry ticket into your digital wallet, to your bank account, the ability to do any transaction. That's a fundamental shift. So there are a lot of people attacking the problem, but they're still attacking it from a risk perspective. Right. We've taken the approach that says identity is fundamental, and it can't be, give me 99.8% probability that I'm Bimal Gandhi. We give you 100% algorithmic certainty that it's Bimal on his device, on your mobile app, with the right credentials at the same time. And we did it by flipping the paradigm. Today, you connect a device to a network by creating a secure channel and then verifying identities. That's part of the problem. It's not incorporated into the channel. We actually flipped it. We said, let's verify the user before we ever create the connection to the network. So I'm never opening the door a crack and saying, let me see who you are, and then if you're the wrong person, I got to shove you out. We just never let you in.
Right. I mean, in some respects, the paradigm that you described also, I believe, it treats identity, as you say, as this risk factor, and therefore kind of almost criminalizes the sense of who the person is, right? And so we have, huge de-risking of money around the world. We have all sorts of human, 2.5 billion people who don't have a bank account, for example, right? Because they can't prove who they are. So you're telling me that, in some respects, do we push that identity question? Obviously the linking of the identity to the device is critical, and that once we've done that, then we move forward. But what about that question of identity? Is that resolved through this process? Does it become redundant in a way? Because all we're trying to do is say, you're who you say you are.
So the provenance of that original identity still needs to be validated, right? And today, that's a financial institution or an enterprise's responsibility. And that's why you have identity proofing, you have KYC, you have other elements, right? You're seeing a shift to self-sovereign identity, which could solve that problem. But self-sovereign identity means somebody has to take responsibility for saying that's legitimate. Right. And until somebody has deep enough pockets or there is a broad spectrum agreement on that, I think we're still going to struggle with that. But I think you're seeing identity proofing becoming sort of not. My prediction would be identity proofing will be something that is just not unique to financial services anymore. I think down the road you'll see everybody want some legitimate government proof that you are who you are when you sign up. And the way to do that is to just make it a seamless process when you register.
How important is this question to the sort of broad digitization of our economy? I mean, how much of a barrier is security and identity to everything that we kind of, at institutions like this, talk about as this kind of big, bright future?
So I think, look, if you look at the slide that I have up, consumers want to make sure that, hey, is my money, data safe? And on the other hand, they want to be able to do more, right? So our clients love our technology, not because of security, but because we actually increase engagement by 100 to 300% in every implementation. And that's because when you remove security as a risk issue or as a factor, you can do more on any channel. Right. And by doing more, you drive convenience, you drive usage, you drive share of wallet, share of product. And I think that fundamentally every industry, the nirvana is, how do I do more with a customer? And security is that barrier today.
Right.
Today, you think about it, we had a great panel with Siri on, different types of financial services players, right? Well, think about it. Isn't it crazy today that you can't transfer money from one account to another person through any bank on your mobile phone?
Right.
And you can't do it because of security and identity issues.
Absolutely.
Our clients, you can do that.
Right.
And I think that's the key is, and doing it with the user in mind. So, my expertise was never cybersecurity. My expertise was building businesses that drive great customer experience. And so when we came in, we said, let's build this from a customer experience perspective.
The idea of having expertise in cybersecurity is an interesting question, right? Because the paradigm is the one that you described, this reverse model where we need to authenticate constantly who we are. I feel as if there's these firewalls that just get built up and up and up, right? There's a constant race that's going on to sort of toughen those rules, make it harder and harder for the wall to get over, and of course, hackers constantly advance on top of that. Does the paradigm you're describing, what does it do for IT departments in the way that they deal with, this cybersecurity question? I mean, they're a business unit almost into their own. There's there are companies everywhere that are servicing that need.
So the non-political answer is we scare them because we simplify the environment.
Right.
There's no longer a need to have 6 or 7 different applications. This is one solution. Mm-hmm. It's encompassing. It actually simplifies the tech stack. And we've actually had people say, if I put you in, I'm going to lose staff.
Right.
And what we say is, okay, but you're actually going to have a much more secure environment. So I think the paradigm for IT departments is, how do I increase security and make life easier, right? And for the hackers, that means, are you making the wall higher or am I making it a different way to get in? And for us, we're not making the wall higher. We're actually creating a totally different hurdle for you to get through.
Right.
And I think that's the reason we make the claim. Now, 2 years ago when I said this, one of our clients was hit dramatically with hacking attacks, and they didn't get broken.
Right.
It doesn't mean we rest on our laurels. We're constantly innovating. We're constantly adding capability. But it is an arms race. But we believe that arms race becomes a lot easier when it's driven by customer experience.
So, what does the world look like if we can solve this core problem? What are the possibilities that emerge once we've more seamlessly resolved the security?
So my best example that I love to use is think of calling your local florist and saying, hey, I just want to send flowers to my wife. Can you send a dozen roses? And they can say, Michael, no problem, and it's done. You don't exchange information, you don't do anything, it just happens. That's sort of the nirvana that I would say that we all strive for. As a consumer, that's the experience you want. From a payment rails perspective, from a financial services perspective, you want to make sure you're the rail and you want to make sure I'm the payment method. But the consumer doesn't care about that. They want that simple experience.
Right.
So one good example is we have a client that's in Mexico that 3 years ago innovated before they ever met us. So you can walk into their store as a customer, put your thumbprint down, pay for stuff, and walk out.
Wow. Yeah. That's but then there's this question of the biometrics, right? So what if obviously there's great concerns about the security of those biometrics.
Right. So that's why they met us, because they said we have concerns around the biometrics because again it's not 100% certainty. There's gaps in there.
Well, in India in particular, there have been numerous cases of hacking of the Aadhaar system. So.
Right. So for Aadhaar, it's a different problem, which probably would need a different session. But so the player in Mexico said, hey, I've got these weaknesses. You solve for those weaknesses. And for purchases over a certain amount, I can do the biometric, but I can send them a message to their phone confirming their order, and then they can digitally sign that and walk out. And we're both protected. Because the consumer, believe it or not, is equally skittish of biometrics. Because they're like, well, how do I know somebody else isn't going to fake my fingerprint and walk out the door with something? Right.
Yeah. And so, in some respects, I think one of the challenges that any security new prospect like yourselves are going to face, though, is a marketing one, right? Because people take this thing very, very seriously, and they're very concerned about this, and we're sort of educated to feel that way. What's your messaging look like? How are you going to get out? I mean, and I suppose another question is 3.4 trillion transactions. Who are those people, and how do you manage to get them over that hurdle?
So, being recognized by Gartner as a cool vendor, One World Identity as a top 10 global player, and Forrester as a leader helps a lot in our marketing. If I said 2 years ago, it was a different way when you knocked on a door. Today, we have some legitimacy. We have a great client list that's not public. But when we can say that we work with one of the top 5 global regulators, we work with depository clearinghouses, we work with, tier 1 financial institutions around the world, that really helps. But I think what really markets us is if somebody says, show me your product, and I show it to them, they're blown away. Because they haven't seen anything where I can get into an app without doing anything, where I don't need a password on a website, where I can call a call center and I never have to answer a single question to prove who I am. And when I get a transaction notification, I just click yes or no, and I'm done, and everything happens. That experience is what people are striving for. And so their first reaction is, if you can do half of what you're saying, I want to use you.
Right.
And then it's going through the gauntlet of security testing and IT architecture validation.
So do we, you're talking to governments in this?
So we actually have a regulator as a client, believe it or not. The regulator uses us to secure their environment. And that's one of the things. We started out as a military product, but we've actually de-emphasized that in the world of Snowden. Having a large military client base doesn't really help you. It kind of hurts you. We have had governments come to talk to us about automating and handling security on whether it's e-gov stuff, taxes, other things. So we're going down that path, absolutely.
Okay. So what's next? Where does it? Give me a sort of 5-year, 10-year horizon. Where do you see Uniken sitting within this evolving, very rapidly evolving digital money world?
So
and also, what do you mean? What does it mean for crypto? I suppose.
Yeah. So a year and a half ago, I spoke at the New York Stock Exchange at a cybersecurity forum, and Bob Ackerman said, "Does that? Are you essentially eliminating SSL?" And I said, Bob, I would never say that I could do that, but I would tell you that the world of public certificates is out the door if we succeed, because that is the vulnerability. And from a crypto perspective, we think of crypto as a complementary feature, right? So if you think about we bind the user to the app to the device, crypto, the blockchain is just another element that we would use for binding.
Right.
In fact, we're working with a large trade finance blockchain platform where they see us, they see themselves as the highway. We're the on-ramp and off-ramp. We make getting onto the highway easier and getting off the highway easier, and we make that experience for all the banks, vendors, merchants in that process simple.
Great.
So we're excited about blockchain from a crypto perspective, and what does all that mean? I think, look, we have a crypto exchange that's a client. We're great, but I think that's still more wait and see for us.
Okay, fair enough. Round of applause for Bimal, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. All the best.
Thank you.